I remember the exact moment my car sputtered to a stop under that blazing sun. The desert stretched around me, dry and endless, with heat dancing in ripples on the horizon. When I spotted the torn billboard for a motel up ahead, I felt a pinch of relief. My phone had no signal, and I had no water left in the car. The idea of any place to rest, even a rundown desert motel, sounded better than spending a night trapped under the stars without help. I opened the car's hood and stared at the engine, though I knew nothing about such things. It was clear I wasn't getting anywhere on my own. After a few minutes, I locked up, took my small backpack, and set off down the dusty shoulder of the road in search of that motel. The main sign was faded and cracked in places, reading Desert Highway Motel in chipped letters. A smaller sign hanging beneath simply said vacancy in flickering neon. I paused to take in the sight of the long, single-story building. Half of the fluorescent lights above the doors seemed broken. The desert air felt strangely still, like it was waiting for something to happen. I stepped closer, my sneakers kicking up small clouds of dust, and my heart thumped as if I already sensed something was off. Still, I told myself it was just the heat and my exhaustion. A bell jingled as I entered the motel lobby, which doubled as a small reception area. It was dim inside, and the air conditioning hummed softly. At first, I saw no one behind the worn-down wooden counter. Then a man appeared from a back office. He wore an old-fashioned vest, his smile broad but not exactly friendly. "Hello, traveler," he said in a warm voice that put me on edge. "Car trouble, I suppose?" He had no name tag, and he didn't offer a handshake. Yet there was something about his curious gaze, like he was studying me more than greeting me. I hesitated, but then told him about my car breaking down. He nodded in a slow, deliberate way, like he already knew the story before I told it. He slid a small logbook forward, the corners yellowed with age, and handed me an old pen. "Just sign in," he instructed. "We've got plenty of rooms tonight, so you can pick whichever one suits you best." Normally, a normal motel clerk might assign a room, but there he was, acting as if I should already know which one I wanted. The moment felt uncomfortable. I could see that the pages of the book were nearly empty, save for a few crooked signatures spaced out by weeks or months. It seemed no one stayed here for long. While signing, I felt the man's gaze on me. Creepy or not, the thought of a bed and air conditioning was enough to make me push aside my worries. Then, without asking for payment, he handed me an old brass key with the number 6 stamped on it. "At the far end," he said, nodding. "You'll find it's nice and peaceful." I thanked him, but before I left, I asked if there was a mechanic in town. His smile widened slightly. "The nearest town is 30 miles east, but the garage there is closed until Monday. You won't find anyone around until then." A chill settled in my stomach, but I pretended to be calm. "Guess I'm staying for a while," I managed, forcing a little laugh. He just nodded, his eyes lingering on me. I walked out into the sweltering desert air, following the row of doors. One was missing a handle, 2 had peeling paint, and a broken soda machine lay near the stairwell. Eventually, I reached room 6. The door squeaked as I unlocked it. Inside, the room looked cleaner than I expected. Simple, but not filthy. 2 lamps, a small TV, and a bed with faded covers. The walls had a dull, off-white color. A single window overlooked the empty parking lot. I dumped my bag on the bed and flicked on the air conditioner, which rumbled like a jet about to take off. After resting, I decided to explore the place. The silence of the hall gave me chills, reminding me of an abandoned building. Most of the doors were locked, but as I passed room 2, I heard a soft scraping noise from within. It stopped instantly, as if alerted to my presence. I listened for a moment longer, my pulse quickening. Then, deciding it was none of my business, I moved on. I was hungry, so I went back to the reception area to ask about food. The motel owner was nowhere in sight. There was a phone on the front desk, but it looked like it hadn't worked in ages. An old bulletin board behind the desk had postcards from travelers pinned up. Each card had a date and a short message, phrases like "safe so far" or "keep the lights on tonight." They looked decades old. My stomach churned with fresh anxiety, but I tried to be rational. Desert motels often kept old souvenirs from guests, right? I slid behind the desk, checking if there were any menus or phone numbers. I found a single flyer for a diner, but it was across the highway and possibly closed by now. I sighed and returned to my room. Deciding to eat a granola bar I packed for emergencies. Locking my door, I noticed the chain latch was rusty. Still, I fastened it and turned on every lamp in the small space, trying to push away that nagging sense of unease. Night arrived in a hurry. The desert sun replaced by a pale moon that cast strange shadows across the parking lot. The motel was surprisingly dark. Only a few porch lights flickered. While I was seated on the bed, flipping channels, I realized there was no real signal. The screen only showed static and a low buzzing sound. My mind drifted to the possibility that I was the only guest. Where was everyone else? A loud thump echoed from somewhere above me. I froze. Was there a second floor? From the outside, it sure hadn't looked like it. Another thump, then it stopped. My heart was pounding in my ears. If someone was up there, how had they gotten there? The building's roof looked flat when I first arrived. I stood and tried to see if there was an attic hatch in the ceiling. No luck. Nothing but a cheap white ceiling lamp. So I opened my door, stepping into the hallway. A dry breeze greeted me, carrying the faint scent of desert sage. I walked slowly, each step sounding too loud in that eerie silence. A door on my left was ajar. The number on it was 5, right next to mine. I didn't remember seeing any light from under the door earlier, but now a dim glow fell onto the hallway floor. I felt a need to investigate, though logic told me not to. It was like something pulled me closer. I peered inside. The room was empty, but the television was on, showing static, just like in my room. The bed looked untouched. A rocking chair in the corner moved in slow, gentle arcs, as if someone had recently stood up. I took one step in, my heart pounding. Then the rocking chair became still. The movement stopped the moment my foot touched the carpet. I swallowed hard, stepped back, and closed the door, not wanting to attract whatever presence might lurk there. A sour taste filled my mouth as I realized I wasn't alone. Maybe people were in the rooms, but they didn't want to be seen. On my way back, I spotted a flicker at the end of the hallway, near the exit door that led to the parking lot. It was the motel owner, leaning in the darkness. His voice startled me. "Having trouble sleeping?" he asked smoothly. I tried to keep my composure. "I heard noises," I said, "from above. And there's a TV on in room 5. I think someone forgot to turn it off." He nodded, that same too friendly smile on his face. "We do have a few guests in some rooms," he answered, but it didn't sound convincing. "Don't worry, everyone here keeps to themselves." I wanted to ask more, but he gave me a look that made the hair on my arm stand up. It was almost as if he was warning me not to pursue it. Without further conversation, he slipped back through a side door leading to his office. I noticed again the complete emptiness of the parking lot. Aside from my car, stranded near the highway entrance, there were no other vehicles in sight. If other guests were truly here, how did they arrive? Shaken, I retreated to my room and locked the door, pushing a small chair against it. The air conditioner rattled on and off, filling the space with a droning sound that offered some comfort. After a while, I drifted into a restless sleep. Sometime around midnight, I startled awake. Someone was outside, tapping lightly on the window. I froze, breath catching in my throat. The curtains were drawn, so whoever was out there couldn't see me, yet I sensed eyes on me. The tapping repeated 3 times, slow and deliberate. I summoned the little courage I had, stepped toward the window, and lifted the edge of the curtain. Moonlight revealed an empty parking lot. No figure, no movement, just the desert's quiet. Yet the tapping continued, soft and insistent, right against the glass. I realized the sound was not from outside. It came from within the wall itself, near the window frame. It reminded me of knuckles against glass. My heart raced. Suddenly, the tapping halted, replaced by a faint whisper, like breath escaping from behind the drywall. I jumped back, stumbling over my own feet, and crashed onto the bed. The whisper faded, leaving me trembling in the dark. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When the first rays of sun finally lit the sky, I gathered my things. My mind was set on getting out, even if it meant hitchhiking to the nearest town. I left the motel room, noticing the corridor was bright and quiet. The TV in room 5 was off, the door neatly shut. The place almost looked normal, except I knew better. At the front desk, I found the owner once again. He stood there, cleaning a mug that looked ancient, with chipped edges and a faded logo. "Heading out?" he asked, his eyes not leaving the mug. "Yes," I said firmly. "I need to find a mechanic." He placed the mug down and gave a small shrug. "We'll miss your company," he replied. I handed him some cash, not even sure how much the room cost. He didn't count it. Instead, he just nodded, placing it gently in the drawer. Outside, the rising sun reflected off the dusty hood of my car. I walked over and gave the engine another look, feeling lost. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. It was the owner, carrying a small can of gas and a set of old tools. "Let me help," he offered. Even though he made me uneasy, I didn't have a choice. We fiddled with the engine, discovering it might have overheated. He poured in some fluid from a container labeled water coolant mix and told me to try starting it. Eventually, the engine coughed to life. "Should be good to last you to the next town," he said, stepping away. Relief washed over me, but I still felt uneasy about the night before. As I was about to drive away, he tapped the hood gently. "Remember," he said, leaning against the driver's window, "the desert can be tricky. Sometimes it keeps you here longer than you'd like." His grin was polite, but there was a coldness in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. I thanked him anyway, determined to leave. The car rattled, but moved forward. In my rearview mirror, I watched him standing in front of the motel, growing smaller as I accelerated. I managed maybe 5 miles before a strange feeling made me glance at the rearview mirror again. I thought I saw someone in my back seat, just a flicker of movement, like a faint gray outline. When I turned around, the seat was empty. My heart pounded, and my hands shook on the wheel. I told myself it was just my frayed nerves and exhaustion. I tried to ignore the chill in my spine. further down the road, a large crow perched on a rusted fence post. As I passed, it took flight, circling my car for a moment. That's when I noticed the reflection on the inside of my windshield. It wasn't just me. It looked like a second silhouette behind my own. Again, I whipped my head around, and the back seat was empty. But the shadow lingered in the corner of my vision. My thoughts returned to the motel's silent rooms, the bizarre tapping behind my window, the occupant in room 5 who never appeared. A realization struck me, something I desperately tried to deny. Maybe I hadn't left alone. I kept driving. The next town was small and nearly as run down as the motel, but it had a gas station and a mechanic willing to look at my car. I parked near a pay phone outside a diner, intending to make a call. Before stepping out, I checked the back seat, thoroughly nothing. No one. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the desert had left a mark on me. I imagined the motel, with its dusty sign and flickering vacancy light, continuing to lure in travelers for years to come. By the time the mechanic told me the car just needed a few parts replaced, the day was ablaze with a scorching sun. He said he could do it by evening, so I sat down at the diner for a meal. The booth was near a window. I caught myself staring at my reflection in the glass. I thought I saw something next to me, a vague outline, almost like a shadow belonging to someone else, someone not there. My heart skipped a beat, but then the waitress brought my coffee, and the image vanished. I wondered if the motel's emptiness had followed me like a persistent echo. I might never know what secrets lay behind those closed doors at Desert Highway Motel. Whether the quiet rooms were truly empty or something else lived in their silence remains a question gnawing at my mind. Even now, I sometimes dream about that place, about the tapping on the glass and the voice behind the wall, and I jolt awake, drenched in sweat. In my nightmares, the owner stands in the corridor, wearing that same polite grin, telling me I belong there, telling me the desert doesn't let anyone go so easily. Sometimes it feels true. I have told a few friends about it since then. They usually laugh it off or say I was dehydrated and hallucinating. But I know what I felt. I know the weight I carried when I left, like something unseen was riding in the back seat. Since that trip, my life has never felt quite the same. It's as though a piece of my spirit remains on that lonely stretch of highway, part of me still watching the neon sign flicker in the hot desert night, hearing the faint ring of a bell echo in an empty lobby, and feeling that strange presence that never quite said goodbye.